You don't notice it at first. It feels like any other quiet moment. Your cat is there, as always, resting beside you, watching you with those calm, unreadable eyes. The room is still. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. Just the soft rhythm of an ordinary day. But hidden inside these ordinary moments, something permanent is being written. Not in words. Not in actions you can easily see. But deep inside your cat's memory, in a place where feelings don't fade. Because your cat may forget where they left a toy, or which corner they explored yesterday, but they never forget how you made them feel. There are moments, small, almost invisible, that stay with them forever. Moments that shape how they trust you, how they love you, how safe they feel just being near you. And the truth is, most people miss them. Not because they don't care, but because these moments don't look important. They don't make noise. They don't demand attention. They just happen quietly. And yet, they mean everything. One of those moments happens every time your hand reaches toward your cat. Most people think they're doing it right. A gentle pat on the head, maybe a scratch behind the ears. It feels natural, familiar, safe. But there's a place, a very specific place, that carries a meaning far deeper than anything most people ever realize. A place your cat has been hoping, waiting, for you to discover. It's right there, between the eye and the ear. That soft curve where their cheek meets the side of their face. If you've ever noticed your cat gently pressing that part of their face against you, against furniture, against corners, that's not random. That's communication. That's memory being created. When a mother cat cleans her kittens, she doesn't do it carelessly. She returns to that exact spot again and again. Slow, gentle, precise. Because that's where comfort lives. That's where safety begins. And when you touch that same place, softly, patiently, something changes inside your cat. Not just in the moment, but deeply, permanently. Their body begins to relax in a way that goes beyond simple comfort. It's not just, this feels nice. It's, this is safe. This is home. There's a quiet warmth that spreads through them. Something they don't question, something they don't analyze. They just feel it. And over time, that feeling becomes attached to you. Your presence, your touch, your existence in their world. It becomes part of how they understand love. But here's what makes it almost heartbreaking. Most cats go their entire lives without experiencing this in the way they need. Not because they're unloved, but because no one ever notices. No one realizes that such a small detail could hold such deep meaning. So they settle for less. They accept the head pats, the quick scratches, the distracted affection. And they never complain. Because cats don't ask. They wait. And if you do discover it, even by accident, something beautiful happens. Your cat begins to change around you. You might notice it slowly. The way they lean into your hand a little more. The way their eyes soften, half closing, like they're drifting somewhere peaceful. The way their body, once alert and guarded, begins to melt into stillness. That's not just relaxation. That's trust being built, layer by layer, memory by memory. You're not just petting your cat. You're becoming part of their emotional world. A place they return to, even when you're not there. And that's the part people rarely understand. Cats don't just live in the present. They carry emotional echoes. What you do today, lingers tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. It shapes how they respond to you, how they seek you, or avoid you, how they feel when you enter the room. And it doesn't stop with touch. Because there's something else your cat is constantly listening for. Something that has nothing to do with food. Nothing to do with toys. Nothing to do with routines. It's your voice. Not the exaggerated, high-pitched sounds people often use. Not the playful teasing or quick commands. But your real voice. Your normal, everyday voice. The one you use when you're talking to someone you trust. Your cat listens to it more than you think. Even when it seems like they're not paying attention. Even when their eyes are closed. Even when they're in another room. They're listening. They're learning the rhythm of your emotions. The rise and fall of your tone. The subtle shifts that reveal how you feel, even when you don't say it directly. And over time, that voice becomes something familiar. Something grounding. Something that tells them, everything is okay. But when that voice is missing, when the home is quiet, not peaceful but empty, something begins to fade. At first it's almost impossible to notice. Your cat becomes a little quieter, a little less expressive. They stop responding the way they used to. And eventually, they stop trying to communicate at all. Not out of stubbornness, not out of independence, but because, in their world, communication only matters if it leads to connection. If no one answers, the effort disappears. And with it, something soft and important inside them. That's why your words matter. Even the simple ones. Even the ones that seem meaningless. Telling them about your day. Speaking while you move through the house. Letting your voice exist in their space. Naturally, calmly, without force. It's not about teaching them words. It's about giving them presence. A reminder that they're not alone in their world. That they belong to something, someone. And slowly, they begin to respond. Not always with sounds. Sometimes it's just a glance. A small movement. A shift in the way they sit closer to you, without making it obvious. But it's there. That quiet connection. Built not through grand gestures, but through consistency. Through moments that feel too small to matter. Until you realize, they matter more than anything. And then, there's a moment most people never even notice. A moment that happens every single day, quietly, predictably, and yet holds the power to shape your cat's entire emotional world. It happens in the early hours of the morning. Before the day begins. Before the noise. Before the distractions. Between 5 and 7 a.m., your cat wakes up with a purpose. Not to eat. Not to play. But to check something important. Something instinctive. Something they don't even think about, but feel deeply. They're checking if you're still there. If their world is still intact. If the connection they rely on still exists. And in those first few seconds, when they approach you, watch you, wait for something. They're not asking for much. Not attention. Not effort. Just acknowledgement. A sign. A quiet confirmation that they're not alone. And what you do in that moment, or what you don't do, stays with them far longer than you could ever imagine. That moment in the morning, it passes so quickly you almost don't realize it happened. A small shift in the bed. A soft presence near your face. The quiet feeling of being watched, not in a threatening way, but in a way that feels patient. Hopeful. Your cat is waiting. Not demanding. Not insisting. Just waiting. And most of the time, without even knowing it, people turn away from that moment. They stay asleep. Or they wake up just enough to ignore it. Maybe they gently push their cat aside thinking, not now. It feels harmless. After all, it's just one moment, one morning, one small interaction. But to your cat, it's never just that. Because in their world, this moment carries something ancient. Long before homes, before soft beds and quiet rooms, cats lived in a reality where survival depended on one simple truth. If your group is still together in the morning, you're safe. If someone is missing, something went wrong. That instinct never disappeared. It just changed shape. Now, instead of scanning a wild landscape, your cat scans you. Your breathing. Your presence. Your awareness. And when they approach you in those early hours, they're not being needy. They're asking a question they don't have words for. Are we still okay? And your answer doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as opening your eyes for a second, letting them see that you're there. A soft blink. A quiet good morning. The smallest movement of your hand, just enough for them to feel you. That's all it takes. And yet, it changes everything. Because in that brief exchange, something inside your cat settles. Their body relaxes in a way you might not notice. Their mind lets go of a tension that was never obvious to begin with. And the rest of their day begins from a place of safety. They move differently. They explore more. They eat with ease, play with curiosity, sleep more deeply. Not because something big happened, but because something small happened at the right moment. And when that moment is missed, again and again, something else begins to change. At first your cat still tries. They come closer. Wait a little longer. Watch you with a little more intention. But when nothing comes back, no acknowledgement, no response, they start to hesitate. Then, they start to stop. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. They stop asking the question. They stop expecting the answer. And over time, that invisible thread between you becomes thinner. Not broken, but weaker. Less certain. And the hardest part is, you may never notice it happening. Because everything else still looks normal. Your cat still eats. Still sleeps. Still exists beside you. But something soft, something essential, has faded. All because of moments that felt too small to matter. And this is where understanding your cat becomes something deeper than just care. It becomes awareness. The ability to see what isn't obvious. To feel what isn't expressed. To respond to needs that are never spoken out loud. Because cats don't explain themselves. They show you, in ways that are easy to miss. And one of the most important ways they show you, is when they've had enough. It often begins so subtly that you might not even recognize it. You're petting your cat, enjoying the moment. They seem calm, relaxed, maybe even purring. Everything feels perfect, until suddenly it isn't. A flick of the tail. A slight ripple across their back. Their ears shift, just slightly. Their body changes weight, almost imperceptibly. And then, without warning, they pull away. Or worse, they react. A quick bite. A sharp swipe. A sudden burst of energy that feels completely out of place. And you're left confused. What just happened? Everything was fine. But for your cat, everything wasn't fine. There is a limit, a boundary, that exists inside them. A point where comfort turns into overload. And unlike humans, they don't always have the ability to ease into that transition. It happens quickly, quietly. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the warning signs entirely. Because they are there. Always there. That small movement in the tail isn't random. That subtle tension in their body isn't meaningless. It's communication. Clear. Honest. Immediate. I've had enough. Not because they don't love you. Not because they're irritated. But because their body can't process any more sensation without it turning into stress. And when you notice that moment, when you stop right there, without pushing further, something remarkable happens. Your cat remembers, not just the comfort, but the respect. They learn that you understand them. That you're not going to cross their boundaries just because you want more affection. And that creates a different kind of trust. A deeper one. The kind that doesn't come from constant attention, but from safe attention. Predictable attention. Attention that knows when to begin and when to end. And the next time you reach out to them, they won't hesitate. They won't brace themselves. They won't prepare for too much. Instead, they'll relax before you even touch them. Because they already know. You'll stop when it matters. But when those signals are ignored, when the petting continues past that invisible line, your cat doesn't forget that either. They remember the discomfort, the overload, the feeling of being trapped in a moment that didn't stop when it should have. And even if they don't react right away, it builds, little by little, until one day, the reaction comes faster, stronger, less predictable. Not because your cat changed, but because their memory did. Because every boundary crossed becomes part of how they understand you. Safe or unsafe, gentle or overwhelming. And over time, those small moments create a pattern, a map, one that your cat carries quietly every time they see you, every time you move toward them, every time your hand reaches out. And then, there's another moment, one that happens not when you're close, but when you're about to leave. There's a moment, just before you leave the house, that your cat understands better than you think. It doesn't begin when you open the door. It begins much earlier, with the smallest, almost invisible signals. The sound of keys being picked up, the quiet shift in your routine, the way your movements change, becoming more focused, more distant. To you it's nothing, just another part of your day. But to your cat, it's the beginning of something unsettling. They start to notice, not consciously, not logically, but instinctively. Their body reacts before their mind even has time to understand why. Their breathing changes, just slightly. Their attention sharpens. They watch you more closely, tracking every movement, every sound, every subtle difference in your behavior. Because they've learned something over time. These signals mean one thing. You're about to disappear. And in that space before you leave, your cat enters a quiet state of tension. Not panic. Not fear in the way we imagine it. But a deep, lingering uncertainty. How long will you be gone? Will things still feel the same when you come back? Will you come back at all? They don't have the words for these questions, but they feel them. And most people respond to this moment in one of two ways. They ignore it completely, moving through their routine without acknowledging their cat at all. Or they do the opposite. They turn it into something emotional. Long goodbyes, extra affection, sudden attention that feels different from everything that came before. Both feel natural. Both feel harmless. But to your cat, both create confusion. Because what they need in that moment isn't intensity. It's certainty. Something calm. Something predictable. Something that tells them, without overwhelming them, that this moment has meaning. That your leaving isn't chaos. It's a pattern. A rhythm they can learn. A story with an ending they can trust. That's why a simple ritual changes everything. Not something complicated. Not something dramatic. Just something consistent. A quiet phrase, said the same way every time. A small treat, placed in the same spot. A toy that only appears in that moment, and disappears when you return. Something that connects your leaving to your coming back. Over and over again. until your cat no longer feels that rising tension. Because now, they understand. This is how it goes. They leave, and then they return. And slowly, that uncertainty fades. Their body doesn't prepare for stress anymore. Their mind doesn't stay stuck in waiting. They move on. They rest. They exist in the space you left behind, without feeling lost inside it. But when that pattern doesn't exist, when every departure feels different, unpredictable, incomplete, your cat doesn't relax. They stay alert, waiting, listening, sometimes sitting near the door, long after you've gone. Their body never fully settling. Their mind never fully letting go. And over time, that constant state of quiet tension begins to change them. Not in ways that are obvious at first, but in ways that slowly shape their behavior, their mood, their health. Because stress that never resolves doesn't disappear. It stays. It builds. And your cat carries it silently, just like they carry everything else. And then, there are the moments that feel the heaviest of all. The ones most people misunderstand, even when they're trying to do the right thing. When your cat is sick, not just tired, not just quiet, but truly not themselves. Their energy fades. Their movements slow. They withdraw, not completely but enough that you feel the difference. And your instinct is to help, to check on them constantly, to touch them, comfort them, reassure them over and over again. Because that's what care looks like to us. Presence, attention, action. But to your cat, this moment feels very different. They don't need intensity. They don't need constant interaction. What they need is something quieter. Something that feels almost invisible. They need you without needing you to do anything. Just being there, in the same room. Not watching them too closely. Not forcing closeness. Not filling the space with concern. Just existing nearby. Reading. Sitting. Working. Letting your presence be steady, calm, predictable. Because in their world, vulnerability is dangerous. Even now, even in a safe home, that instinct remains. When they are weak, they don't want to feel exposed. They don't want to feel observed. But they also don't want to be alone. So they choose a middle ground. Close enough to feel your presence. Far enough to feel safe. And when you respect that space, when you don't push past it, something inside them relaxes. Not physically, but emotionally. They don't have to guard themselves. They don't have to hide their discomfort. They can just exist in it. And your quiet presence becomes something powerful. Not because you're doing something, but because you're not doing too much. And slowly, they begin to recover in that space. Faster than you might expect. Because they're not fighting two things at once. Not the illness and the pressure of interaction. Just one. And your presence supports them without overwhelming them. But when they're left completely alone, when that presence disappears, something else happens. A feeling that goes deeper than discomfort. A kind of quiet abandonment. Not intentional. Not cruel. But real. And that feeling slows everything. Their recovery. Their appetite. Their strength. Because now, they're not just dealing with illness. They're dealing with isolation. And those moments, they don't fade. They stay. Deep in the part of memory that holds emotion, not logic. And then, there is one final moment. One that only comes once. A moment no one ever wants to face, but every cat will eventually reach. And somehow, they know. Not in a way we can fully understand, but in a way that shows itself, quietly. They move differently. They seek different spaces. They look at you, differently. There's a softness, a stillness, something that feels like they're already beginning to let go. And in that moment, your presence matters more than it ever has before. Not just physically, but emotionally. Because your cat is no longer trying to understand the world. They're trying to understand the end of it. And what they need from you isn't denial. It isn't forced hope. It isn't pretending that nothing is changing. They need honesty. Gentle, quiet honesty. The kind that doesn't take away comfort, but gives permission. Permission to rest. Permission to stop holding on. Permission to be exactly where they are, without needing to fight it anymore. They need to feel that it's okay. That they were enough. That they are loved. That they don't have to stay strong for you. Because even then, in their final moments, they are still thinking about you. Still connected. Still aware of how you feel. And when you speak to them, calmly, softly, with acceptance instead of fear, something shifts. Their body relaxes in a way that feels different. Deeper. Their breathing changes. Their presence becomes lighter, quieter, more at peace. Because now, there is no tension left. No confusion. No need to hold on. Just release. And that moment, that final memory, becomes the last thing they carry with them. Not the pain, not the fear, but the feeling you gave them. And when you look back one day, remembering all the quiet moments you shared, you begin to realize something. It was never the big things that mattered most. Not the toys, not the routines, not the visible care. It was the small, invisible moments. The ones that felt too simple to notice, too quiet to matter. And yet, they shaped everything. Because to your cat, love was never loud. It was always in the details.